So, I want us all to have a foundation to understand the roots of modern critical biblical scholarship. The information that I'm giving you here is from an article written by John Torres. Why is there an error in Mark 1:2 in your Bible? If you want to study it further, that article has many footnotes where you can get references to follow up with the things that I say. It started in 1796 when Johann Jakob Griesbach, a liberal scholar and rationalist, came up with 15 canons or rules on how to evaluate ancient manuscripts. Those 15 rules could be more or less reduced down to 4, but for the interest of time, I'm really only going to talk about one of them now. That fourth canon is the reading that creates discrepancies with other or parallel passages is the preferred reading. The thought there is that scribes reproducing manuscripts, as they are aware of what they're writing, if they see an error or a contradiction, will tend to want to correct it. So the error is probably what was in the original manuscript. This may sound reasonable, but there is no data to prove it. There is no scientific basis for it. It is simply out of Griesbach's head. Really. If I worked up to that fourth canon, it might seem more reasonable, but when I start there, you say, "What? How can that be?" Hey, it is. I'm telling you. Griesbach's canons from 1796 are used today and recognized today as the way to deal with ancient manuscripts. Let's move on. In the late 1900s, 2 Bible manuscripts were discovered that date back to the 4th century. They were the oldest manuscripts discovered to that point. They were named Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. Here's the thing. They were full of errors. Let me read something. In the early 20th century, biblical scholar and textual critic Hermann Hoesker did a careful comparison of these 2 codices and found more than 3,000 significant disagreements between them in the gospel books alone. In fact, they do not even come close to the 70% agreement required to be classified as members of the same text type. Codex Vaticanus omits words or whole clauses 1,491 times in the gospel accounts alone and is disfigured throughout with repetitions. Codex Sinaiticus abounds with errors of an eye and pen. On many occasions, 10, 20, 30, 40 words are dropped through very carelessness. Letters and words, even whole sentences, are frequently written twice over or begun and immediately canceled, while that gross blunder, whereby a clause is omitted because it happens to end in the same words as the clause preceding, occurs no less times than 115 times in the New Testament, in Codex Sinaiticus. These manuscripts, Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus, have been labeled the best manuscripts. And I have even heard, Dan McClellan say, the best manuscripts say this or the best manuscripts say that. But understand that they are called the best manuscripts because of Griesbach's canons from 1796, which say the best manuscripts will have the most errors in it. Therefore, I hear, and I'm not picking on the guy, it's just that I remember hearing him say this, Dan McClellan saying the Bible is full of errors. Dan McClellan uses what he calls the best manuscripts as authoritative when those have been termed the best manuscripts absolutely because they're the worst manuscripts. So the whole thing about the Bible is full of errors is circular reasoning. We assume from Griesbach's canons that the best manuscripts will have errors in them. We find manuscripts that are full of errors and call them the best manuscripts, and then we say, aha, the best manuscripts are full of errors, therefore the Bible is full of errors. Let me give you one example of how that plays out. In Mark 1:2, Mark is saying that John the Baptist is fulfilling prophecy from the prophets. Most newer translations say from Isaiah the prophet. The two best manuscripts say from Isaiah the prophet, but that's wrong. The first part of it is not from Isaiah, it's from a different prophet. So they say, look, the Bible has errors, when in fact 96-point-something% of the manuscripts, and there are over 1,700 other manuscripts that say, as said in the prophets. There are only 3% of the manuscripts, including Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, that say from Isaiah the prophet. So the critical biblical scholars are saying the Bible has errors in it because they are using manuscripts that have that error. They are using 3% of the manuscripts that have that error and saying that error exists when 96% of the manuscripts that we have do not have that error in them. And as a review, it all goes back to Griesbach in 1796. Some rules that were laid down by a non-believer and have been accepted blindly by everybody right up to this day. So critical biblical scholars say unashamedly it is academic consensus that, and go on to tear down the Bible. But they've set themselves up to be able to do that. Don't be intimidated.